Drug dependence, there are many definitions of drug dependence, and there is no way with a tissue sample or anything to detect this diagnosis. The diagnosis is set by behavioral signs and indications. But anyway, something like drug dependence means that a person needs a drug to function normally. Abruptly stopping the drug leads to withdrawal symptoms, if we put craving also, and drug addiction is the compulsive use of a substance despite its negative and dangerous effects. And there are systems to diagnose drug dependence. This is the World Health Organization's International Classification of Diseases, the 10th edition, criteria for tobacco dependence. The problem with this system is that you are asking the same questions regardless of whether you are diagnosing for alcohol dependence or amphetamine or benzodiazepine dependence. And here the questions has been geared to smoke, but if you are an alcoholic in front of you, you then find out if there is a strong desire to take alcohol. And if they can't control the amount they are drinking, here it is about smoking. So this system is very generic, and that's why I have to say, sorry, we moved the wrong direction. This questionnaire that I made in the end of the 70s have actually become more used, and particularly it is then the two questions: how soon after you wake up you start to use your product, and secondly, how many cigarettes you smoke. These are the two most important single indicators for dependence. Maybe it was said a little bit yesterday also that when I entered this area, and we are then speaking about the 70s, smoking was much more prevalent than nowadays. It was relatively, widespread in the society. There wasn't social gradients there. Were professors in medicine that were smoking, and it wasn't the lower SCE classes, and it was considered as a habit. And many of us, including myself, Professor Russell was even earlier than me, saw that there is something else here operating than a habit. So it became quite sort of common for us to hammer on nicotine and highlight the nicotine. And that really took effect. So I would say that from 1988, when this thick book of some 600 pages was published, it was clear it is nicotine that is governed smoking, and nicotine is the problem in terms of addiction. So, okay, the pendulum had swung from a habit, and just a habit, to now it's a drug addiction, and that were working with it, we were as happy because now could be seen as the real scientists that were dealing with cocaine, amphetamine, etc., and not just psychologists dealing with the habit. However, when you sit back some 10, 15 years after 1988, you find that in the history I haven't heard or read of an epidemic of pure nicotine. And it's extremely easy to make your own pure nicotine. You only need a leaf of tobacco and a jar with alcohol, and that's all that is needed. The nicotine replacement, even in full dose, you replace all the nicotine that the smoker used to have, has limited efficacy. Virtually no misuse of nicotine replacement. Certainly not patches, nasal spray, yeah, maybe a little bit. If you give nicotine intravenously to humans, they hardly choose that more than the placebo, the saline. The same with animals. You can get animals to administer nicotine, but it's not as strong. They don't work as much as they do for amphetamine and many other drugs of addiction. So that they need special sort of conditions to get them to take nicotine. Denicotinized cigarettes are preferred over nicotine-containing products. How come? And yeah, I said nicotine. So have we gone too far in emphasizing that this is all about nicotine? And is it correct when people they are talking about cigarette smokers, they are studying them and they are studying nicotine dependence? Isn't the cigarette a little bit more than the nicotine also? Are they looking at cigarette dependence or tobacco dependence? So tobacco is more than nicotine, and we have started to find out that there are also other substances like acetaldehyde, hormones, norhormone, and other salsolinol. There is a group of other substances that are reinforcing by themselves in animal work. And if we look at this picture where animals, rats, are pushing a lever to get saline, to get acetaldehyde, nicotine, but combination of nicotine and acetaldehyde, then they are really working and pushing the lever and injecting themselves. Dependence is also to more than the chemical substances that are in the tobacco. I mean, the cigarette as an object is quite important. The habit and all the sensory stimulation that goes with it. There is, because of nicotine has a short half-life, you don't take it once a day. You take it usually 10, 15, 20 times a day. That is, the physiology requires that to have some concentrations of therapeutic effect. And being so engaged in the behavior, there is plenty of opportunity for conditioning. After the dinner, after the coffee, when I have accomplished this, when I open the letter for my friend and I need a cigarette, etc., etc. The smoking per se can be relaxing. I mean, you are lighting up, you are taking a relatively deep inhalation, a couple of them that is supposed to be relaxing. Smoking can also reduce tension and anxiety. You engage in a behavior. Those of us who do not smoke, we meet a friend, we offer a cup of coffee, we need to engage in doing something together. Just sitting there, stiff, trying to talk, it's not the best idea to socialize. From a cigarette, the nicotine delivery to the brain is faster than can be done by any other administration form. It's actually faster than if you were to inject it intravenously. So apart from, we have learned, and I think we agreed, that we do have a continuum of harm with cigarettes in one end and nicotine patch in the other end, and snus is somewhere here. E-cigarettes, where is it? We do not have any epidemiological studies, so it's harder to say where e-cigarettes are on this continuum, but I'm fairly convinced that they are in this end anyway. Now, I tell you an anecdote. So, I am working with varenicline, or Champix, the smoking cessation drug, and we are doing a study on snus users that want to stop in Scandinavia. So we are a number of centers in Norway and Sweden. I'm a center, and I'm also the coordinating investigator for this study. And I sit with and we do the study, and the results come out, and huge. We have very high success rates in the snus users, even in the placebo group, but hardly any effect of varenicline because the placebo group did so well. So writing up this study, which actually appeared in the British Medical Journal, you have to screen, you have to look at what else have been done with stopping smokeless tobacco. And there are a number of studies. And so I went to the Cochrane and looked at all cigarette cessation studies published in Cochrane with all sorts of treatment, nicotine gum, nicotine patch, bupropion, varenicline. We are talking about 150 studies here. In these studies, placebo group, we wanted to look at the placebo where they were sort of untreated. We have average results of 10% succeeds long term, 6 to 12 months. If they are stopping smoking. In smokeless tobacco cessation trials, we're not talking about hundreds here, but we are talking about 20 or so. The placebo success rate is 25%. And interestingly also, Tønnesen recruited 200 long-term gum users in Denmark and gave them varenicline Trempix to help them come off long-term use of gum. Half of them got placebo. In the placebo group, we have 36% success. So it looks that it's much more difficult to give up smoking than smokeless, and the easiest would be to give up with nicotine replacement. When I was sitting there with the snus users, and let's say we were at 3 months, and that was where we sort of ended the behavioral support program, and I say, you have been very good now, but please watch out, relapse. The risk that you will relapse from 3 months to 1 year is 50%. No, they say. Of course it is, I know this. No, you are speaking out of the smokers' experience from smokers. Oh yes, that's true. I don't have a lot of experience with smokeless tobacco. Most of them have been smokers themselves. I know how it is to give up smoking, and there is always this risk of relapse. It never ends. You see the beautiful lady sitting there and smoking, and you feel the smoke, and you see it in TV, you see it in movies, you see they take up their cigarette. This is something different. This is a much more solitary thing. I'm a carpenter, and I have my snus there, and I'm working, and I start to get a little bit low, so I take it out, and I put in another thing, and I cannot see if they are doing it. We don't go out together and do it, and if another is a computer guy, and the same there. So they told me that the withdrawal the first days or the first week was in every case as difficult as with cigarette smoking. And some said I have to change sheets several times, sweating. But when you get over the physical withdrawal, the relapse rate must be different with snus. So here are the results from the study. This is active. And this is a placebo here. And there is barely a significant difference here with Trempix, simply because there is a sort of a ceiling effect. The placebo group is having a very high success rate in percent here. The relapse rate from 12 weeks to 26 weeks, there isn't any relapse at all in the placebo group. There is a small relapse in the active group. So maybe there is something, that there are different processes operating on the smoking, much more complex dependence compared to smokeless. So what about e-cigarettes? What evidence do we have here? Yes, Konstantinos have recruited 111 e-cigarette users that were using only e-cigarette, I understand, for at least 30 days. And he assessed dependence to e-cigarette by time to first e-cig, compared it with time to first cigarette when they're using regular cigarettes, and also rating of their dependence. And dependence rated lower on e-cigarettes, and significantly so for both these questions. And these results are supported by a study from Lynn Dawkins and Gorniewicz, and also from Jonathan Falls, where I have some personal communication here. He looks at dependence on cigarettes and e-cigs, and the criterion is how soon do they start after waking up. And we see that this is the e-cigarette, 15% start within 5 minutes in the morning, while with traditional cigarettes it's 35%. So for the data we have, it seems like e-cigarettes have less dependence. You can also look inside the category of NRT, and we do see some long-term use. And for patch, we virtually do not see long-term use. But for the nasal spray, It isn't very much used because it's aversive, but percentage-wise there is more long-term use there, and for gum there is also some. So I think there is a continuum of dependence as much as there is a continuum of harm. With cigarettes in one end, with NRT in the other end, with snus, in terms of harmfulness, snus would be here. But in terms of dependence, I think snus is more towards the traditional cigarettes. Where are the e-cigarettes? It's hard to say. Maybe the old versions were more on this side and the new modern tanks more on that side. More data is obviously needed there. And this is not any more difficult or strange than dependence potential varies for other drug commodities also. Alcohol, for example, and we have a taxation system that is, we want people to drink beer and wine rather than hard liquor. And cocaine is another example where the dependence potential differs. This is the last slide, I'm sorry. So dependence is influenced by total dose is important. Speed of uptake is very important. With cigarettes it's very fast. Amount of behavior and conditioning seems also to be very important. Social factors, if this is acceptable, if you are in a culture where this is more or less prescribed, of course that influences also the physical addictiveness. Many more take up. Taste and other sensations that goes with the drug. Adverse effects can moderate here, and price, availability, etc. And there are more factors, but we don't have time to go into that. And then I must thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Karl. We're going to move straight on to